All right, everyone. Just as everyone's starting or joining us today, we'll give everyone maybe a minute or so more. But one thing we always like to start out with at Qt, since we are quite a global company in terms of employees and the customers that we're serving, we always think it's fun and interesting to hear where you all are joining us from in the world today. So there should be on the Zoom chat, or sorry, on your Zoom toolbar, there should be a chat option. If you could drop in a note there where you're joining us from today, I think that's always a little interesting to see. And then that lets us give everyone 30 seconds or so to join us today.
I can start. I'm from Denmark.
There we go. That's maybe a good start. I'm from the US myself originally. Let's see where we got some West Palm Beach, beautiful spot. Ooh. Much better weather than in Copenhagen right now at the moment, I'm sure. Edmonton, Chicago, London, Finland, Irvine, California. Wow, got quite a nice assortment of places.
What time it is there.
I was gonna say Philadelphia, Philippines. Nice. Glasgow. Okay, really cool. I was the evidence was borne out. This is quite a diverse global audience. So I think it's maybe now been 2-3 minutes, so we can go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for joining and entertaining us there with the questions. My name is Christian. I'm on the Qt marketing team, and I'll be the host for today's webinar, Qt Integrations Demystified, How to Ensure You're Set Up for Success. A couple housekeeping notes. We do have some time set aside for Q&A at the end. So there should be a Q&A bar at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Feel free to enter in a question there, and we'll be happy to have the experts get to it afterwards, towards the end of the presentation. And also, we will be recording this presentation, and we'll be sending it out, I think, on Friday. So in case you want to go back and review the webinar or share it with a colleague who wasn't able to join today, you can easily do that. So with that said, I think we'll start off by having our two experts today introduce themselves, Arzu and Martin. Arzu, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I am Arzu, and I'm the Customer Success Team Lead here at Qt. Super excited to be here today. I'm just looking forward for 30 minutes or up to 40 minutes of fun. My role here at Qt is to make sure that all of you gets to use our platform to the best usage as possible. And in general, well, I, together with my team, are the advocates, so we are advocating for any feedback that you have to us. And I'm just really excited.
Nice. Martin?
Yeah, hi, I'm Martin Larsen. I'm a Director of Product here. I'm mostly working on the product team with product management. So trying to figure out what we are building next and trying to help the teams build the best product for you as well. I also do speak to a lot of customers in my daily work, so if anyone wants to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to do so. I'd love to hear your feedback on the product.
Great. Cool. Thank you. So just a brief overview of what we'll be discussing, or what you all will be discussing today. So just a quick refresher about what the integration options are that are out there for Qt, why it matters, which integration a customer might choose, the specific, that's going to broad brush overview or high level, and then we'll go in a bit to the more details of the different types of integrations, their specific benefits and drawbacks. We'll focus, I think Martin in particular will talk a bit about what's new in the world of integrations and what is ahead. And then again, as I mentioned, we'll have some Q&A together with Martin and Arzu. So with that said, again, maybe just quick refresher on what integration options there are. Maybe Arzu, you could walk us through that.
Yeah, so quickly, as you can see on the slide there, currently we have 25 plus connectors, and you can broadly sort of put them into 5 categories. I think, well, I could almost say that 90% of the customers that started, usually they started on a JavaScript. So it's probably been a while that you've chosen your integrations. So, your needs might have changed the last 2 years. People have had the time to also look through their tech stack. So now is a really good time. If you look into the corner on the left side, you can see it says client side. And we know that JavaScript is really easy to integrate. It's just a little snippet that you put on your website. We also do have web application that speaks and integrate into most programming languages. And then obviously we also have native apps that you can choose from. So some of the popular frameworks that you can see and platforms are Android and Apple. And these are all sort of integrations that can be done on the application level. If we look a bit lower, you'll see that we also have at the infrastructure level, such as the CDN and the load balancer. We work heavily with Acar and Cloudflare, just to mention two. And our e-commerce platforms like Salesforce and Magneto are obviously also very popular options.
Great. And maybe Martin, you could talk a bit about, okay, we have these integrations, these connectors, SDKs. Where can you manage those, and how can you manage them?
Yeah, exactly. Because once you've chosen your connectors, that's kind of only half of it. You need to configure when and where users are ending up in waiting rooms and what waiting rooms. We kind of have different options for that. You can use the Go platform. There's a UI where you can set up what we call action and triggers. So the trigger is basically when a user needs to go to something, and the action is then what the user is going to do, like ending up in a waiting room, for instance. So it could be a particular URL you set up to send users to the waiting room. It pretty much works like Google Tag Manager, and it's a great option for customers that are just getting started. Maybe they're not running that many waiting rooms. Maybe they're not changing the setup too often. If you kind of want to go a little bit further here, we have an API to update all of this as well, so you can automate the whole thing. So let's say you run maybe more waiting rooms, like, I don't know, a handful every month or whatever, and you want to automate the whole thing, make sure that the error-prone manual setup is removed, then that's a great option. The third option that we have is the in-application option. So basically, this is where you, with your team, go in and write the entire logic about when users are going to what waiting rooms into your application, and maybe you have an interface in the back where you manage your sales, and then it might be a checkbox there. You say integrate with Curate. This is of course a tight integration, requires developer resources and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks, Martin and Arzu, for giving us sort of a quick refresher on what the options are there for managing the integrations, and also what connectors there are. But I think, Arzu, you mentioned a bit, for some cases, some of our customers, some people joining today, might have been several years ago, right, that this integration was done. And we know obviously Qt is sort of you do the integration once, and then everything else you can configure using one of the management options that Martin just outlined. So maybe it might be a revisiting of the integration, right? Why does it matter, right? Why should people why does it matter which integration is chosen? Maybe you could start off by clarifying that for our customers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we look into the integration efforts, we know that JavaScript, it can take 15 minutes. If you choose some of our other integrations, it could take a few days. And here it's kind of, leads us into the security question that you can delve into.
Sure. Security matters a lot for some customers. For other customers, it doesn't really matter too much. When we talk about security, it's about have users been through the waiting room when they actually make a purchase? How many purchases are they making, and so forth. And depending on what connector you choose, that's going to be very different what we support here. Yeah.
And the same goes sort of for the troubleshooting. For example, if you pick the Edge connector as an instance, that would be much more for, I guess, your team, Martin, to go in and take over and help as quickly as possible. But if you pick some of the other connectors, the troubleshooting could be a little bit more difficult. And we would also be requiring from your end that you have more highly technical skilled employees from your side that can execute on the troubleshooting in that instance.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Then we have performance and availability. They kind of go hand in hand. So performance is much about where is the first hit. Is it on your servers? Is it on the infrastructure? Availability is much about what happens if your servers are down. Can users still end up in the waiting room and have a good user experience anyway?
Yeah. And what do we mean by the feature enhancements here?
I mean, what we mean is that we're constantly at Qt looking into the connector options, right? We want to look into what's moving on the field. We know that different of all of the things that we're going to present today, there are different limitations, there are different demands. So whatever we hear from the customer is mainly where our focus is, but at the same time, we're obviously also just having our finger on the pulse of the market and, feeling what's going on out there. Could we pick something that's stronger and better?
And some of that is also working with our partners to have new features on their end that will enable us to do new stuff.
Yeah, basically. Definitely. Yeah.
Great. So now I guess like talking specifics here, let's get into maybe some of the nitty-gritty about the benefits and drawbacks of the different types of connectors. And the first one we have is sort of the client side, maybe the quick, as you mentioned, Arzu, right? Maybe even 15 minutes, but potentially vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you could walk us through that, both of you.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, Arzu is really, really quick to integrate, and it's a really good option for many customers.
Yeah, definitely.
It is technically working as a piece of JavaScript that you put in on your HTML on your website. So that also means that it runs client-side. It's very easy to set up, as you said. Like the developer will take like a few minutes to do that. Even if you have a Google Tag Manager, anyone can do it. But of course, running client-side means that it cannot really be trusted, the code. So if you're a little bit tech savvy as a user, then you can bypass the queue, and you can also bypass some of the validation that we have afterwards when you get out of the queue. A second drawback is that as it runs in the HTML, the server will actually need to render the entire UI before the user is sent to the waiting room, which causes a performance hit on your infrastructure.
Interesting. And I think Arzu actually had there was a kind of Martin, you were talking about the bypassing and tech-savvy users. I mean, there are also YouTube videos out there, right, where people explain the steps. And I know you had kind of an interesting story when we were going through this presentation earlier, just about, that type of bypassing.
And you don't only have to be, technical skilled. You can also just be a huge fan, right? Crazy about a product. And we have an example of that. We had when somebody, like a wine store that was selling these specific wines for a certain year, and they were having 100 of these wine bottles. And what they found, they just had a basic queue set up there. And what they found was that some of the real huge fans, they were going in line like several times. So buying more and more of the same wines just so they could stock up at home. And that's not really what the company wanted.
Right.
So in that instance, we ended up discussing, the connector, like the server side, as a better option for them in this instance.
Yeah, that's a nice transition actually into the next sort of group of connectors, right? The secure, but maybe a bit more complex integration, Martin.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have these kind of problems with the users bypassing or buying multiple times, then going to a server-side connector is definitely an option. As this code runs on your server, it can be trusted, so the end users cannot tamper with it. So we can put on all the security validation in place. So where the user through the queue and who is the user, did the user sign in, and are they who they claim they are, basically. So that's a huge benefit of the server side. There are some drawbacks again. I mean, the nice visibility and troubleshooting possibilities that we had with the client side kind of goes away. You kind of need to have some skilled professionals, developer resources, and obviously also you need to be able to change your source code.
Yep. Actually, that makes sense. And I think, here at the last point we have to talk about, and also something, Arzu, you talked about as well, some of them have, some of the integrations we have more or less they're more or less transparent, right? And something like the Edge connector, which we'll move to in a second, right? That's a bit easier to troubleshoot than the server side, where you have to be in the application and changing the source code, as you mentioned. So maybe, Martin, you could walk us through the Edge, which is sort of this positioned as sort of maybe the Goldilocks solution here. Not too cold, not too hot, just right. Sort of that nice balance of being quick but also secure.
Yeah. So just as a brief introduction to what we mean when we talk about edge connectors. Basically, a few years back, CDN providers started to allow customers to run code at the CDN, not just serve static resources. So that is something that is perfect for us because we can take the connector and we can put it at the CDN instead. More and more providers are doing this. Currently, we are supporting CloudFront and Cloudflare as well as Acar. We're looking on to others such as Fastly as well. And here we basically get all the benefits of the previous two. The server, the code can be trusted. It runs server side, even though it's in the client, in the CDN. The users cannot tamper with it. So we have all the security stuff. We have all the visibility because it's basically just a web interface that our supporters can sign into. There are even more benefits here because the initial hit is taken by the CDN. So when users are sent to the waiting room, no request has been made to your backend infrastructure. No servers has been touched. So that also means that if your servers are down, users will end up in the waiting room anyway, and will have a good user experience even though your backend is struggling. Obviously, the drawback here, it does need a CDN that has these edge computing capabilities. So.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that walkthrough. Sorry, Martin. So we also have we mentioned earlier a bit mobile app and e-commerce platforms that we can go through. I know they don't maybe as neatly fall into the categories as this kind of trio that we've thought of, but maybe you could talk through a bit some of the specifics of the mobile app.
Yeah. I'll just talk briefly about them. I mean, if you have a native app that you want to support with the waiting room, obviously, you need to put the waiting room into your application. So we have support for iOS and Android, of course, and various stacks inside those two. So that's definitely an option to do, and you can run it side by side with some of the other options as well. It's, again, a little bit complex to do. You need to have a developer do it for you. You also need to redeploy the app to the App Store and so forth. So.
Yeah.
So, but this is only for native apps. If you have, you might have an app on Android or iOS that just uses the website in the back, then we can integrate at that level instead with some of the other connectors.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then we have the e-commerce one, which is for those of you who are running on a hosted platform. In those, you kind of have limited options of integrating. So typically, you cannot actually change the source code. You can just maybe upload a plugin. So we provide plugins for some of these popular platforms as well. And it's basically wrappers around the server-side connectors.
Okay. So it would still be kind of above the, or not being able to be tampered by end users in that regard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They have different limitations, all of the different providers. So there might be some things that are not supported in some e-commerce platforms.
Okay, that makes sense. So if we try and boil this all down, try to make a bit of a table here for visual learners like me. This is maybe a little bit of again, that Goldilocks analogy I used earlier, but I'm seeing a lot of check marks on the right-hand side of the table. I don't know, Arzu, do you want to have kind of comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the client side, it's quite obvious that, I mentioned before, like it's ease of use, it's easy to troubleshoot on it, but it does lack, you could say, the security. And that could be a bit of a question if you're targeted by bots and you know that you are.
Exactly, and then the server side would be obvious to go for. Also with the server side, you get some advanced features. If you want to do that really tight integration, server side would be the right approach to do, right? But of course, we have Edge as well, and it kind of ticks off a lot of boxes here. It's a nice.
So we're not being biased here.
No, but it is kind of an exciting option also for us as a company, because we get to actually give you the best of everything.
Yeah.
That's true.
That makes sense. So thanks to both of you for that sort of comparison, and I think people have a better idea hopefully of what the drawbacks and the benefits are of the specific integrations are. So maybe Martin, you could walk us through a little bit, just also a refresh of some specific new things in the world of integrations here at Qt, and also kind of where, as it from a product perspective, right, like where our focus is moving forward.
Sure. We have a lot of focus on connectors. It's a big part of our product. So we continuously release new stuff, basically. What we released recently, or we've been working a lot on recently, is the Acar Edge Worker connector. And we have a very tight partnership with Acar, so we're actually also working with them to give us new features so we can make it even better for you. Then we have a Salesforce cartridge connector that we released as well. It's a very improved version of the previous Salesforce connector we had. It includes some significant security updates, so if you're on Salesforce, be sure to upgrade here. We talked about the API for managing action and triggers. That is also fairly new and is available now. So if you're sort of a little bit tired of setting up these things by hand, then look into how to automate it. Finally, we have a 3.7 update just released, which has, again, some security updates and also some feature updates as well.
And as the marketing person in the room, I would be remiss to not mention that we actually do have a sort of a specific product update blog that we write together with the product team on all 4 of these topics. So those you can find on the homepage when you log into the Go platform. There's a little widget there that shows the latest product update blogs. Or also, if you navigate to our website, they live under the blog. There's a tag for product updates. So if you want to delve a little bit deeper into any one of these 4 topics.
Or you can ask your customer success manager, obviously.
There we go. That's also nice. That's the customer success manager is a good option as well. They know these backwards and forwards. And maybe, Martin, you could talk about future vision.
Sure. So coming up, we have the continuous focus on connectors again. It's a really big part of our product, and we continuously improve it. So the focus right now is on edge connectors, of course. We love it, right?
we saw the green check marks.
Yeah, but we continuously monitor this market as well as new CDN providers will have support for our connector. We will add them as well, and based on requests from you guys as well out there. We also continue to add new features there. There's a lot of things that we can all of a sudden do with these edge connectors that we couldn't do before. So we have another product called Insights that is coming out, and we are planning to make an integration between these two. So we get data feed in to Insights from your edge provider, basically. It's going to be really exciting, I think, and I look forward to that one for sure. Security is another major concern for us. A lot of you guys out there are having issues with bots and other types of fraud and abuse. So security is a big part, and a lot of the effort that we actually put into connectors now is around that. Final thing I want to mention here is the ease of implementation of these connectors. So we want to make it really easy and less error prone for you guys to do it. So that's a major effort that we have been having for years and will continue to have as well.
Great. So to sort of sum up, because I know we just run through a lot of different details, right? So the takeaway message, if someone's trying to think about that for the presentation, is it kind of sort of edge connectors are the future? It seems like maybe, I guess, how would you sort of frame it, Arzu and Martin?
Yeah, I mean, obviously now we're really pushing towards edge, and it is a good option, but we also know that some of our customers are in basic need of a JavaScript, and that's completely fine, right? So the question and the conversation that you're going to be having at the end of the day is, what are your needs? Like, what fits your needs? What fits your industry and your business or the product or the service that you're selling? And that's the big question. Yeah,
we do. I mean, edge is there where our edge connectors are there where they are almost as easy to do as JavaScript, right? So the benefit of using JavaScript is less and less there. But of course, I mean, for some customers where security might not be a big concern, then it's a lot easier just to use the JavaScript for sure. And server side also still have its place for both the places where Edge is not available, but also where you want to maybe do something that is a little bit more advanced.
Or even a mix. I mean,
you
could also do a hybrid format of them. So
that's definitely also an option and something that is required if you have a progressive web app or something similar.
Yeah, great. So we've reached the point in the presentation where we have opened it up for we're on time
26 minutes past.
for some questions and answers. So gonna see we have a whole team here supporting this new webinar setup that we have with the fancy plants and everything. So we'll just get to see. Let's see what the questions are that are streaming in, so we can see those. I know we did have a question. Maybe you could elaborate a bit more on this hybrid approach. I think that's something that someone has, people have been wondering about.
Yeah. So I mean, if most applications are kind of complex, right? Some will be fine with just one connector, but in general, applications are more complex nowadays. So you want to probably end up with a hybrid solution in the end, where maybe you use an Edge connector, but then you use JavaScript for some pages that are on a CDN somewhere, or you use the JavaScript for supporting AJAX requests. Could also be that you have the mobile app requirements as well. So maybe you're gonna end up with a set of tools. There are also customers that will have like a CMS system for the product pages and the front page of the website and so forth. And when you go to the shopping experience, it's a totally different system built on another tech stack, with also different requirements to security and so forth. So having the JavaScript on the CMS system is maybe fine, and then maybe go with server side or Edge on the transaction system.
Gotcha. And I can see we have another sort of somewhat related question, but to sort of recap, why move from the server side, which again has that security that we've talked about, right? What would be the benefit of moving from that to the Edge connector, for example?
Yeah, I think we kind of discussed it already a bit, but it's basically the visibility and the maintainability of it. Once you have the server side connector inside your code, it's kind of a piece of your existing business logic, right? So it's always nice from an architecture point of view to pull the things apart, and by putting it on the infrastructure, it just gets a lot easier to manage it. And then of course we have the availability and the performance benefits, which are also significant to include, I would say. I mean, even if you have a server side, so what actually happens is that the request comes in and your server will handle that request, and then return a 302 if the user needs to go to the waiting room. It's pretty simple to return a 302 error code or HTML code, but it still takes a little bit of resources from your system, and if the system is down, users are having a bad user experience, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So Arzu, I can see another question. I think this one's for you.
Yeah.
All right, how do you find out who is your customer success manager?
I would say by now most of you will reach out to, but if you haven't, you can very easy peasy. I mean, you've probably submitted a support ticket, so ask for your customer success manager. There will be an instance. Someone from my team will reach out. We will also be sending the recordings of this video out and following resources. If you need any immediate contact, just reply back on that one, and we'll be getting back as soon as possible.
And just to make sure everyone knows exactly what to do, the support ticket, this is the support ticket you do inside the Go platform, right? And then there's like a question, question mark, right? Venue, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then there'll be a little Zendesk pop-up or...
Yeah, correct.
All right.
And in general, just feel free to reach out to me or Arzu directly, or refer to us. I mean, we're more than happy to start the conversation.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we're basically right on time. 31 minutes passed, and those seem to be all the questions that we have at the moment. So I think I'll take this time to thank Martin and Arzu for joining this webinar today to have this conversation with you all. Thanks to you all for taking the time out of your day from all around the world to watch this webinar. Hopefully the contents and the new format have been a bit engaging. It's nice to be back in person for this, and hope you have a wonderful day. And again, we'll be sending out the recording in the next day or two, so you'll have that in your inbox. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.